Good morning, everyone. I'm Teresa Harvey, President and CEO of the North Orange County Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to another Chamber broadcast focused on leaders in our community, the issues facing our businesses, our community, our citizens, and certainly our region. Today's discussion is on K-12 education and the impacts of COVID-19 on their environment, the challenges, the opportunities, and the lessons learned. We've heard a lot in the news about schools adapting to change and accommodating to teaching in a COVID-19 environment. Today, we will hear from Robert Pletka, Superintendent of the Fullerton School District, and Scott Scambray, Fullerton's Joint Union High School District Superintendent, on how they have maintained quality education for students while adapting to new regulations required by local, state, and federal restrictions. And as all of us know, those are changing daily. Our first presenter will be Dr. Bob Pletka. Bob has been in education for 30 years, serving as superintendent of the Fullerton School District, serving our K-8 students since 2012. He came to the district after serving as the superintendent of the Centro Elementary School District. Dr. Pletka grew up in Lakewood. He's authored 2 books, one entitled Educating the Net Generation, How to Engage Students in the 21st Century, and My So-Called Digital Life. He has a doctorate in education in the joint program from UC Irvine and California Polytechnic University, a master's degree in educational technology from National University, and he earned his bachelor's at California State University, San Bernardino. He's married with a brood of 6 children and loves fishing and is a die-hard LA Chargers football fan. I'm sure he can't wait for football to get back underway. Our second presenter is Dr. Scott Scambray, who was hired as superintendent of the Fullerton Joint Union High School District in Fullerton in July of 2015. Prior to coming to Fullerton, Dr. Scambray served as superintendent of the Merced Union High School District in California. He served as principal at the Rancho Verde High School, assistant superintendent of testing and accountability for the Val Verde Unified School District in Moreno Valley. And prior to that was a mathematics instructor in the Fresno Unified School District, where he also coached football and basketball. Sounds like we're gonna have a whole team of sports here. Dr. Scambray earned his Bachelor of Science degree and his MBA, and his business administration from the other CSUF, Fresno, and a Master of Arts in Educational Administration from University of San Francisco. A Tier 2 Professional Clear Administrator credential, educational administration from the United States International University, San Diego, and a doctorate in education from the University of Laverne. Welcome, gentlemen.
First, I just want to thank you for inviting me, and I'm going to share just a little bit of a brief overview of our journey over the last year, and then I know at the end, Scott and I, be happy to answer any questions that you have. There's literally every moment, every day, there are changes that are occurring, and we're trying to respond to those. So the first, I just want to, again, I'm introduce myself. I'm Dr. Bob Pletka, and in the next slide, you'll see I have 2 assistant supes with me. And I had that picture because the amount of time that our cabinet has spent together has been amazing just to be able to start this. So this summer, we were spending probably anywhere from 4 to 6 hours a day just to be able to plan, to be able to open up in the fall. And so it really is, I'm very fortunate, very grateful. I have a really good team of people in Fullerton, as Scott does as well. And we're just so grateful for all the people that made really the opening of school in person possible. Just a little bit of background on our school district. So we have about 12,800 students. About 28% are English learners. And actually our 2 largest groups are Hispanic and Asian. So 51% Hispanic and 22% Asian. And that's changed. Actually, the largest growing ethnic group in our school district is our Asian population. When I first got here, it was about 12%, and it's almost doubled in the last 8 years. We have 15 elementary schools, 3 junior highs, and 2 kindergarten through 8th grade. And then just there's a few of the programs. We started a new homeschool program. So for families that truly want to continue and do homeschool, which is not quite the same as distance learning, parents that want to work with their kids in a structured, in a guided way, they can. And so we opened that for the first time this year. And then I just wanted to, yes, we're here to talk about the pandemic and its impact on education, but we're really proud that we were able to continue our programs. One in particular, our speech and debate team actually won the junior high division nationally this last year. So we're really proud of the work that we've been able to continue even during the pandemic. I think for us, again, I talked about the team. You'll see the picture. Part of it is trying to find some ways to have fun. This was pre-COVID-19. I'm looking forward to being able to have this sort of interaction again in the future. But I think as we looked and as we planned, we wanted to start, what do we believe and what we felt was important in terms of our children and our staff and our community. And so we really started, well, what's our moral imperative? And so one was to reduce the risk of transmission of COVID-19, and we spend a lot of time doing that. I'm going to share a little later about all the precautions that we put into place to make this work. But as we look at risk and the risk of transmission, it cannot be looked at in isolation, and we didn't. So as an example, we have 40% more cases where kids have done distance learning that have cases of depression and suicidal ideation than in previous years. And so we found, again, that we wanted for those parents and families that wanted to provide, wanted to come to school in person, we wanted to provide it because, again, there was a risk, a tremendous risk of kids and their social emotional needs. And we, like I said, we've seen that already. We also have the risk of, let's think of kindergarten, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds. Their primary goal, our primary goal, in addition to keeping them safe, is to teach them to read. And we all know that while I think Zoom is fine for meetings, it is still not an ideal way to teach a 6-year-old how to read through Zoom. And so there was this sense that we would fail 2 grade levels of kids, our 1st grade and 2nd grade, if we didn't at least offer the in-person to those families that wanted that option. So again, this moral imperative about reading instruction, especially in our primary grades, the social emotional needs of all our children, and specifically as I look at our junior high students, mathematics has been a challenge in teaching through Zoom. And so wanting to, again, to be able to offer the in-person instruction for those families that want that. So that's what started our journey, this belief that we needed to do this for our children and ultimately for our community. Yes, how do we open safely and how do we be able to provide the best education possible and providing families choices? And so those kind of 3 things guided our journey. And if you think back to last year, July 13th, as contentious as it was and it is now, there is still a level of optimism as we look at vaccinations, and we do seem to see the light at the end of the tunnel. But back in July, I was receiving between 30 and 40 emails a day from parents, literally half saying, we should open. This is the most important thing for my kid, for my child. They need to open. And literally the other half of parents saying, absolutely, we can't open schools. And so this debate raged back and forth. And for us, ultimately, the way we were going to navigate this was to give parents choice. If a parent really wanted their child to stay home, they felt it was best for their child. And I believe that parents know what's best for their child. And so if they wanted to choose distance learning, we wanted to give them that choice, and we did. And those that wanted to be able to offer in-person instruction, we wanted to provide that, and we did. And so that's how we dealt with this very polarizing subject. And you'll see the date, July 13th. And these headlines continue, but I will say there is a greater level of optimism as we move forward. And I, again, talked about this moral imperative. And so as we move forward, and one of the things that we talk about in administration and specifically in our district is what is the ethical, what is the moral perspective on this. And we want that to guide our actions. And that was always in the forefront of any decision that we've made, making sure that we were making sure that our staff was safe and doing everything that we could. And that means spending the dollars so that they did feel a sense of safety, or that we can provide that safe environment from PPEs. And we'll talk about some of the other things in the future to our kids and doing what's best for them. And kind of this is where maybe our story begins a little bit on some of the pragmatics. I did want to share a few of the things that we've done at a really practical level beyond some of our, kind of the ethics of this. And so next slide. So here's just a few of the things that we've done to ensure, and there's a whole list, and I won't bore you with the entire list, but we do temperature checks. So we bought digital, basically cameras that read the temperature. So everybody who comes in, every child, every parent that's going to meet with somebody, and every staff member is screened for temperature. It's done very quickly. We can move hundreds of kids through in just a few minutes. In addition to that, you can see the stickers that we had created. 6-year-olds need structure. And so telling 6-year-olds to just stand 6 feet apart doesn't work. And so we literally have thousands of stickers all over our schools to show where kids line up, where they stand. And that's been in some ways something that's helped us be successful, especially with our smaller children. However, I think even as adults, we all like reminders. And so the stickers have been pretty helpful in that way. Just one other thing I wanted to, yeah, thank you. Next slide there. Yeah, you can see the temperature. You can see the camera. The camera has a built-in, basically, thermometer that scans for temperature. We have the computer. It lets us know right then. We set up wellness checks, or basically, if we had areas where kids were screened and they were sick, they were able to take some water and kind of calm down, and then if we would take the temperature again, and if they were still had that higher temperature, we called home so that a parent could pick them up. We have hand washing stations everywhere, including the protocols as kids enter, especially our younger children, as they enter in the classroom, that they wash their hands. And so those were some of the things that we did to make sure that our kids and 5-year-olds are not great at washing their hands. And so they need lots of reminders. And so in addition to the physical stations, we have protocols in place to help them with that. What does learning look like? I will say, for those that say distance learning is great, for those that say hybrid is great, for those that say Zooming and rooming is great, it's not great. It's okay. It's okay. And so what I feel like what we did in the past was to provide a really outstanding education. We've had to respond to the pandemic, and I look forward to the day where we can return to a fuller, richer education. But right now, if you see the picture on the left, the teacher has a computer, and so on that is Zoom, and so they are instructing the kids there. In addition, you will see that we had an audio amplification system for the kids that were in the classroom. And so when you had kids that were in the classroom, what happens is the mask muffles the sound. And so it's not that it's hard to hear, it's hard to understand. And so we had an amplification system that picked up the teacher's voice and amplified it through basically speakers in the classroom that helped with the muffling of the sound. And so teachers then dealt with the complexities of teaching to kids online while also teaching to the kids that were in front of them. And it was challenging. Again, to say that that it's all great, I think we responded in a very challenging situation, in a very an important way. But again, I don't want to say that somehow like as good as it used to be. If you see on the right side too, all our classrooms, the kids are socially distanced. They do wear masks, and they are approximately 6 feet or more apart.
Thank you, Dr. Pletka, for your great example of what schools have done. And we'll get back to answering more specific questions as we move forward. But right now, I'd like to go ahead and have Dr. Scambray from the Fullerton Joint Union High School District present what the high school district is doing and has done to maintain educational services for the 9th through 12th graders as they prepare their adventures for higher education. Scott, welcome.
Thank you, Teresa. Thank you for letting me be here. Welcome, everyone. Well, just a quick review. We are a district of 13,500 students approximately. We draw from 3 different cities, in Fullerton, obviously, including La Habra and Buena Park. We are a destination district. We attract about 1,400 students from outside our district. So we're proud of that. We have a lot of good things going on. We have 6 comprehensive high schools and 1 alternative site. Skipping ahead, last year, just about this time, COVID was going rampant, and we were told, and we made the decision to close down our schools and to go to online learning only. Very proud of the fact that we only missed 2 days, and we transitioned to an online distant learning format within 2 days. And that meant all of our students had a live lesson every day from our teachers. We had provided cameras to all of our teachers. All of our students have had Chromebooks, and were able to Zoom all of their lessons for the rest of the 2019 and 20 school year. And like Bob said, it's the best we can do. It's definitely not anywhere near a live lesson. For those students who don't have Wi-Fi, we provided hotspots, so all of our students had access to a live lesson through hearing their teachers and the ability to communicate with them all day during their classes. While we did the best we could, our teachers have done a fantastic job. It's just not like learning in person. And again, we did a great job in working under those conditions. But I have a senior daughter now. She's had difficulty, and like Bob said, she's having trouble in her calculus class because they're not in class. They're not able to communicate as clearly. The number of Fs for us doubled in the fall from the previous year, and that's very, very concerning. Those are classes that need to be made up. While my daughter has her own bedroom, she has her own desk, many of our students don't. They're in multifamily dwellings. They don't have a desk to work on. It's been a real challenge for those students to find a quiet place to learn while we are on distance learning. In November, like with Bob, we were able to move to a hybrid schedule. With the hybrid meaning we could, the parents had a choice. We broke them into 3 cohorts, A, B, and C. The A students come to school on Mondays and Thursdays. B cohort comes on Tuesdays and Fridays. And the C cohort do not come at all. About 50% of our students have chosen C cohort. The parents don't feel safe at this time sending them to school. But they still receive that live lesson from that teacher on a daily basis. So we're only going 4 days a week, Wednesday, we do not have any students at school, and that's used for the deep cleaning of our classrooms. Going back, and Bob mentioned, and I don't want to get redundant, we have all the same safety features, temperature checks for everyone coming into the school on a daily basis. The students receive a bracelet to know that the teachers will know that they have gotten their temperature checks. We have the hand washings. The social distancing obviously is very important in the classroom. We have 6 feet in between the students and 6 feet in between the students and the teacher. Our classes range anywhere from 7 to 15 students. Proud to say that we have had, nobody has contracted COVID since we went back to since we went to hybrid in November. When we came back from the winter break, the district decided to hold off. The COVID rates were rather high, so we held the students out for about a month and went 100% distance learning. We returned to hybrid learning 2 weeks ago, and that's where we are right now. Challenges for us. And again, our teachers have done a wonderful job, but when you look at some classes, like our CTE classes, auto shop, welding, our arts classes, absolutely impossible to learn from home. And I'm not going to say it's been a wasted year, but pretty close to, because you just can't learn those things at home. And it's been really sad. Think about letters of recommendation. Students need those for college. Well, if they are not in class with that teacher, get to know them, it's a challenge to write those letters of recommendation because they're not getting to know them on a daily basis. Athletics has been curtailed. They've been able to work out in limited fashion. It has opened up the last week. That's a challenge for us. We have about 5,000 athletes. And that's not including all the students who are in band and all of those things. It's opened up. That's a big part of our high schools. The students who are involved in those activities. It's a reason some of them do come to school. And so we're opening up and under the current conditions that are given by the state. Where do we go from here? Well, I think it's imperative that by next year we are back in school full time. I don't believe we can take another year of the learning loss that we just cannot make up. We need to be back in school full time next year. Hopefully conditions will continue to improve drastically as they are, and maybe towards the end of this school year we can get the students back in full time. But that has to be our goal, because the learning loss that has occurred is impossible to make up. It's going to take 5 to 8 years, in my estimation, to do this. We have districts around who haven't even been in hybrid, and students have not been in class for an entire year. And it's sad. It's nobody's fault, but we need to start looking ahead and see how we can fix the situation.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Scambray, Dr. Pletka. I have a question here, and it says, can you please explain the differences between next year in school compared to before the COVID-19? And if each of you could answer that, perhaps starting with Dr. Scambray and then progressing to Dr. Pletka, the changes that you see next year compared to prior.
Wow, getting out the crystal ball. I said, I'm assuming they mean if we're back full time. I think it will depend on the vaccinations and where we are. We need to get back full time with our kids there. Full time. Will we still have some of the safety precautions implemented? Possibly. We'll do whatever we have to do to get them back full time. But that's a very good question.
Dr. Pletka, what are you anticipating as changes from 2018 to 2021-22?
Yeah, so like Scott, the crystal ball at this point, mine's been broken a few times. I'm picking up the pieces. So I'll tell you my tea leaves, but don't sneeze because it'll get all over everywhere with the tea leaves. So here's my prediction. Right now there's a lot of pressure politically. And so to open schools back up. And so because of that, I think some of the political will be kind of trying to move forward with an in-person learning. I think the second thing is we have the vaccinations are being made available. And I think safely to say that most adults will be able to get their vaccination by this summer. And so I think that combination will allow for schools to open. Now, with that being said, small children still will not have been vaccinated by the start of school. And so I feel we will be offering a distance learning option for families that want it. We want to do the in-person, we prefer to do the in-person. However, we do know families are not going to feel comfortable. And so we want to be able to offer that distance learning regardless of what happens. The second thing that I think is because kids won't have received the vaccination, I believe that they'll be wearing masks. And I think we'll be wearing masks as we start school. We will continue the temperature checks and the hand washing. As an example, not only is COVID-19 really low in terms of with kids, the number of just illnesses and sicknesses and flu has really decreased. For a while there, I think we had gone 2 or 3 months without a reported case of illness just related to the common cold. So we want to continue some of those good safety precautions, and we think those things will still be in place. But I do anticipate we won't really know whether the in-person or whether we can do the hybrid, not whether we can do it, whether we will be required to do the hybrid until probably this summer.
Great, thank you. I have another question here that I'm going to modify a bit, but I was reading in the paper today that the reopening of LA schools is contingent upon full staff vaccines. And we had a question asked about schools requiring vaccines for students, and under emergency authorization, can this be mandated both for students and for faculty staff? Bob, why don't you start, and then we'll go ahead and have Dr. Scambray.
Yeah, so at this point, unless there was a change in legislation, we couldn't require it of either students at this point or of staff. And so, however, with that being said, I had heard that they're already putting on the vaccination card for kids, for children, that the COVID-19 for the future. So because it's an emergency authorization, and because the studies for small children have not been completed, I do not anticipate either the children or staff for this school year to be required. I suspect that in the following year, 22-23, that it may be a requirement for students. I still don't believe it will be a requirement for staff even a year and a half from now.
Dr. Scambray, do you have anything to add? And I'm going to add, what is the union's reaction to the requirement, should there be one, of faculty staff having to have the vaccine?
The few that I have talked to, they're not happy about it. This is America. They want the choice to do that. And I think we're seeing the people, the communities, 20 to 30% of the people are refusing to get the vaccine for one reason or another. I agree with Bob as far as I believe it will be mandated. I don't believe it'll be done in time for the 21-22 school year. They still haven't come up with a vaccine for children. I don't think it's a high priority because at this point, students haven't, or the young people have not been at risk. But eventually it will be, probably the following year. But as far as mandating for employees, I don't see that ever happening, no.
Great. and I'm going to ask this of both of you, as we look to next year or into the future, with the space constraints that schools have, and you only have so many, you know, we're used to larger classrooms, and now we've really been able to minimize the size of classrooms in order to have the social distancing required. How do you anticipate you'll address the social distancing issues at schools next year if you're back to full-time enrollment in person?
I can answer that. We would have to build twice as many schools. It's going back to the safety things that we have implemented. I believe that has to continue, like Bob said, and the vaccinations, because it's we really don't have a choice. We have up to 35 students in a classroom, and to try to do it any other way and still have them coming 5 days a week is impossible.
Bob, any comments?
Yeah, we have the same issue. I mean, our schools were not designed to have 15 kids in a classroom. And in fact, it's not just the classrooms. I mean, think of the offices, our offices themselves. Some of our elementary offices are tiny. Literally, you can't fit more than 3 or 4 parents in at any one time. So to be able to have small class sizes, regardless of the whole ongoing funding issue, we would literally need twice the number of schools in our district to be able to do that. So I don't see, California Department of Public Health has set the guideline of 6 feet. As soon as they remove that, and assuming there's not new legislation, we will go back to class sizes, in our case, of anywhere from 26 to 31.
Which does address one of the next questions, which is about modifying distances to 3 to 4 feet. And I think as we are able to, then we'll continue to be able to do that. But it really depends on state guidelines. Tell me, both of you, how has state funding increased, decreased, or impacted your ability to continue to function, as so much of that funding is ADA based? And I'm sure your daily attendance at your schools has definitely fluctuated in this time.
I can answer that. The state, as far as ADA, they locked us into what we had last year. So we're very good in that category. And then with regards to COVID funding, we have been very well funded this year. So the funding has not been an issue.
Great. Dr. Pletka, do you have any comment on that, or is it similar?
Similar. I would say the probably the hardest part has been the roller coaster of like, we go back to the start of the year, and then at one point saying that in our district, like, potentially we're going to have to cut $10 million. I mean, at one point there was even a potential we would need to cut 15 million. And then it kind of went the other way. We got word that the feds actually were giving us new money to compensate for that. And so I would say it's been good, but at any given time, our budget theoretically has fluctuated from $15 million deficit spending to $5 million of net income. And it like, so each month it changes. Actually, in some cases, week by week, it has changed. Now, we're in a good position right now. We anticipate that continued good funding for this year and next.
Excellent. I know that both the elementary and high school districts rely greatly upon volunteers, both in the classroom and for extracurricular activity, and that those impacts have been really felt this year by the schools. Dr. Pletka and then Dr. Scambray, can you address how you anticipate re-engaging volunteers next year?
Yeah, I mean, we're really proud of our community here in Fullerton. We are proud of the involvement of all kinds of business groups and parent groups, and everything from all the arts to some of the robotics, to our PTA that's so active and so involved and so engaged. So we've continued to see that level of engagement, but unfortunately it's been kind of at the Zoom level, you know, more of at meetings. And we look forward again to being able to open up our schools when it's safe. to do those, to bring in volunteers again. And we'll use some of the structures that are still there. I mean, we have a group called Champions for Learning. We have 100 parents for around the district at every school. And so we'll utilize some of our parent leadership. PTA and a great, strong organization. We'll utilize some of those. And then the other thing is starting to be able to have activities and events again, where we can bring parents on board and tell them about our schools in person. So we look forward to that day. I think that we'll be able to ramp up pretty quickly on that.
Dr. Scambray, how is that impacting you as you engage the parents, particularly in their involvement in the sports teams that are no longer happening? And do you feel that you can continue to engage parents and volunteers?
Yeah, I think people are just anxious to get back at it. I mean, I get calls on a daily basis and have since the fall. When can we get going? When can we get going? Both from the parent side and from, like I said, we have about 5,000 athletes. That doesn't count everybody that's in band and theater and all of those things that are such a big part of high school that all of these kids have missed out on and won't be able to replace. I don't think it will be a problem at all getting back and going. Just to give you an example, this past Tuesday, we found out that as the COVID rates went down, that sports, football and water polo and these sports could start playing again. Literally that afternoon, they were practicing, ready to go, and we should have scrimmages next week. So they've been preparing for it under the conditions that were laid out by the state. But everybody is anxious to. We're planning a Zoom, a Fullerton's Got Talent that I hope everybody through the Rotary with Dan Halloween. I think that's going to be a wonderful event. It's going to be on Zoom, but the acts will be filmed at the La Habra Theater, and that just gives you an example. People are ready to go and get back at it and know that our kids need these type of things.
That's great. And yes, our community has a great support system built in for the high school district as well as the Fullerton School District. Talk a little bit about your special needs students, your special education students, how they are being impacted by COVID-19 and the distance learning, and how you are really engaging them to support their needs as education.
I could real quick. This is another tragedy of the whole thing. While for our regular ed students, it's been a real challenge. For our special needs, it's been overwhelming. And I know that our special ed teachers and all of the aides have done a wonderful job in getting creative and trying to do it the best job possible, and working with the parents, but nowhere close to where it should be. Been a real challenge.
Anything to add, Dr. Pletka?
Yeah, just to say it has been a challenge. We have offered for our severe mod students the 5 days a week so that they could, if parents so choose to do that. But it is difficult. I mean, we have kids, especially some of our young special ed students, in some cases need diapering. Some of them have trach tubes that need to be changed. And so our parents, they need us. I mean, they have kids that really have severe needs, and it's really with trained professionals that they're able to help them. So, I mean, even though we've been able to offer to our severe moderate students, I think it's been difficult in some cases because of the social distancing requirement. And so in a typical class, it's pretty hands-on. I mean, teachers are right there with the kids. I mean, kids are like the proximity is important, building connections. And with some of the social distancing, it's really hard. I think that social emotional connection has been challenged even when kids are here at school.
Scott, I know that in high school particularly, summer school has been very important to the advancement of those students, particularly those who are college bound and want to accelerate their education system. But now we're looking at the need for remediation in those summer school classes because of the challenges of online learning. How do you envision incorporating summer school into this year's curriculum, or will you be?
Yes, our summer school has always been very, very big, close to 4,000 students we get every year, both for remediation and advancement. I think the real challenge for us in the remediation is if we're not able to bring them back into class full time, we're going to ask them to learn online in the method that they failed in the first place, where they weren't successful. Um,
Yeah, it's a real challenge, and I don't know that it's available. I know that my niece is a work study student at University of San Diego, and she is doing through her work study program one-on-one tutoring with high school students who have particular needs. And I don't know if the district has explored that, but it certainly would be an interesting one with the education programs at Cal State Fullerton or other local universities that might be able to augment the individual needs of students without a financial impact on either the district or the students if it's part of a work study program. Not that I am really familiar with all these things, but it might be something that is an option.
Thank you. The other thing, we do not get reimbursed for summer school. That comes directly out of our bottom line. But it's something it's always been important to the board, and it's a big part of what we do here. So
Hey,
I think the other challenge that comes with that is we have to have instructors. And after this challenging COVID year, how many teachers want to dedicate 3 or 6 weeks to summer school?
Correct.
So we do have some challenges, and those are that's what we're working on right now.
Dr. Pletka, are you approaching it in a similar fashion?
You know, just a little bit of difference, probably based on funding. So one of the things, and Scott and I are in the same position. We don't know if we're going to receive the learning loss money and at what level. And so there is some reason for optimism that there may be money specifically for learning loss, which would include summer school. And so if we get that money, we'll probably, both districts will be in a little bit of a different place. However, again, we got an LAO report that said that we might get as much as $2 million next year for learning loss. We received a governor proposal for us, and we could get as much as $6 million. I mean, those are huge, incredible differences. And so it makes the planning the difficult. If we, though, do get the money and it does come, then we would offer in-person summer school, and we're anticipating being able to do that for about 3,500 students for about 3 to 4 weeks.
Great. I have a question here on the emotional traumas for students and how they're being addressed by the schools. Certainly those students in the elementary schools who are missing the interaction and learning to deal with social issues, but then on the high school level, the traumas of experiencing no social interaction as teenagers in school dances, school social settings, et cetera. If you could both approach how your districts are really dealing with the emotional and psychological issues of COVID, and then we'll take one more question after that. Go ahead, Bob.
Over the past 2 years, we've really built up our mental health department here, even before COVID started. But we have a great staff here. But the challenge is in working with when they're not at school and trying to do it over Zoom and the communication piece. When they're at school, it's obviously much easier. The teachers will report it, or the kids feel comfortable enough to come to us. But when they're at home 100% of the time, that has been the real challenge. And yes, there's been a definite uptick in the number of cases.
Bob, have you experienced similar psychological issues?
Yeah, I mean, so again, we have a screening tool, and for depression and for suicidal ideation that can result, as well as other sort of mental health problems. And so we've seen that uptick by about 40% from previous year. And we, as far as what response, I mean, yes, we provide both in-person mental health, I'll call it counseling or support, as well as online. And so people use both, our children use both avenues. But to Scott's point, it's so much better when it's in person, it's there. I mean, even think of the like, so if you think of a child, let's say in this case, they have an iPad or a small laptop. I mean, the person is literally the size, is 3 inches by 3 inches. I mean, you think of a child and their need for that, all of us really, for that interaction, the smile, that the comforting smile, or even, a pat on the shoulder can be, that human connection is so important. It's hard to do, again, on a screen that's 12 inches by 10 inches. So yeah, we do have it available. We actually have a referral service as well, but we are ramping up for next year, and we'll actually be bringing in a couple additional mental health therapists. We've doubled the number of social emotional support over the last 5 years, and we see that still as a growing need, especially after the pandemic.
Great. Scott, I have a question for you. I was listening to a broadcast on the radio this morning. I've really got to stop listening to so much talk radio, but they were talking about the challenges for students applying for FAFSA aid, and how that they're using peers to really encourage students to apply for FAFSA aid, financial aid for their college students. But beyond that type of thing, how is COVID really impacting students' ability to be prepared to progress to the university or to the college, and in Dr. Pletka's case, to the high school for those elementary school students? And how do we really envision the impacts over the next 3 to 5 years of how this is going to impact our workforce and the preparation of our workforce?
Well, I think you're right. There's always, students are always trying to do different things to separate themselves and make them look more attractive to the colleges. It's getting far more competitive as the years gone by. It's far more competitive now than it was 5 years ago to get into our colleges. The colleges have grown a little bit while the number of college-going students has grown dramatically. So during COVID, for instance, extracurricular activities has been limited. So it's been difficult for students to put that on. They're looking for things to put on their resume. And what do you do? And now they're stopping the SAT, and at least in California, not being required. So to your point, it is very, very limited in what they could do. COVID has had a big impact. And like I said, with teachers writing letters of recommendation or counselors writing letters of recommendation, they don't get to know the kids in a COVID type situation. So how can they write anything at least deeply about them to do that? And what was the second part of your question? I apologize.
That's okay. Student financial aid forms and the FAFSA forms, and assistance from counselors and filling those out and making sure that they get submitted in a timely fashion.
All of our schools had a FAFSA night because it can be a very challenging situation to fill out all that paperwork. We're still doing it, but obviously it's on a Zoom, and that's going to be a challenge. But we will continue to do it. We may have to do it twice for some of these people to make sure that they have the opportunity to take advantage of it.
Great. Dr. Pletka, any comments about preparation for high school and concerns you might have there?
Yeah, so as we were looking at, and so we also have assessments that we use every year in addition to the state assessments. So we were able to give those. And again, it was a challenging situation. So it's hard to be able to say with great reliability what this means. But what we've seen is that, at least in our upper elementary and our junior high, that the areas of language arts are about the same as last year in terms of scores and achievement. We didn't see a big drop off in that area at all. It's stationary. We did see it in the specifically kindergarten, first grade, second grade, where that reading instruction is foundational. But what we did see is junior high mathematics. And I was worried about both our 7th and 8th graders. It's not the same. Math instructions via Zoom is just not the same. And so that's an area specifically in the junior high that we'll be focusing on. And if we receive additional funding for learning loss, one of our target areas is mathematics in the junior high. We are planning to offer some in-person instruction for our 8th graders in mathematics, just as a way to give them a little prep to enter, but we know that that's not even close to being sufficient.
Great. Thank you so much to both of you, Dr. Scambray, Dr. Pletka. I know that there are more questions that people have, and I will try to send them to you individually if you can address them. I think it's important to know what's going on. We are very fortunate in Fullerton, Buena Park, and La Habra to have amazing school districts that we're dealing with. And I commend both of you and your school boards for really advancing the mission of educating our youth. So thank you so much for all that you do. Scott, I understand that you are joining me as we get ready, both of us, to retire next year. So we will go off and be experiencing new adventures, I'm sure, but Dr. Pletka, being the junior among us, will continue to stay on board. So thank you for all that you have been doing. Please join me next week, I believe it is, as in 2 weeks, as we just talk about workman's compensation and the challenges for businesses having employees work remotely. And with that, I say adieu. Have a great day. Enjoy your weekend and have a great day within our North Orange County community. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Thanks.